Hi, I'm Rowan Wood, founder of Starlight Films and co-creator of the Jethroverse and its ensuing spin-offs. As we get closer to the culmination of 4 years of build-up, I figure it would be a good idea to recap the story so far. For those of you who haven't watched it in a while or just don't want to binge 20 hours of Jethroverse content that is currently available, honestly, I don't blame you. The first thing you should know is that the Jethroverse is just a fancy and vainglorious name for the multiverse, a group of multiple and perhaps infinite universes, all existing simultaneously. Each universe exists parallel to the others. Each universe, also known as a dimension, is different in some way. Sometimes the differences are obvious and sometimes they're not. For example, there is a universe where the Nazis won World War II and where some historical events unfolded completely differently. The dimensions are assigned a universally recognizable Earth number depending on their proximity to the core of the multiverse, a singular planet that holds the entire cluster of universes together. Earth 1, the home of Jethro Smith, is the closest to the core, while Earth 2 is directly parallel to Earth 1 and 2 removed from the core, and so on. Every person has an oftentimes identical doppelganger in each universe, which can sometimes be jarring and confusing for newcomers to interdimensional travel. The simplest way to travel from universe to universe is to use a jump watch, an ordinary watch that has been outfitted for interdimensional travel. Some jump watches can even be modified to accommodate time travel. Before we begin the recap, just a brief note on the chronology here. Time moves differently depending on the dimension, and for that reason I will be recapping the events of the Jethroverse and related projects in the order of their release and not the chronological order of events as they take place. And with that all said and done, let's get into it. The first character we meet, naturally, is Jethro Smith himself. After coming home from a walk, Jethro receives a mysterious email.
Dear Mr. Smith, do not panic when you see this email. We are a well-meaning organization and just need some information from you. Sounds like a load of bullshit to me.
He calls his best friend Johann Lang to help him investigate where the email came from. Elsewhere, we discover the man who sent the email is teenage genius William Mallory, who bears some sort of strange grudge against Jethro. Jethro acquiesces to Johann's idea of recruiting their young friend Jeffrey, a technical smartass, to help them trace the origin of the email. Jeffrey is able to pinpoint the location the email was sent from before being called home to dinner. Mallory returns back to his desk and is confronted by Ezra Thorne, his former business partner. Ezra strongly encourages Mallory to continue his mysterious revenge against Jethro.
You're going to find another way to contact Jethro Smith. A more effective way. He has a power, Will, a power that he doesn't even know that he has.
Jethro and Johann realize their search for the sender of the email is useless. While going to the bathroom, Jethro falls through the door and ends up in a completely different part of the house through some strange teleportation. His first disappearance is witnessed by a doppelganger of Jethro.
It was him. I gotta go to the parliament.
Jethro continues walking through doorways and ends up in a movie theater, a library, and finally outside of his own house before finally getting back to his room. This weird new power of his has captured Jethro's full attention. Mallory and Ezra monitor Jethro's progress, and Mallory comes up with a plan to call Jethro as a method of confrontation. Meanwhile, the British doppelganger of Jethro, known as Agent Smith, returns to his place of work, the Parliament, an organization made up completely of Jethro doppelgangers. We discover that Jethro is the last to discover his dimension-jumping abilities, but the Parliament decides to wait a while to recruit him. And finally, Mallory's backstory and motivations are revealed. His mother, a government agent, was hit and killed by a heat-seeking missile, and Mallory discovers that Jethro Smith was present on the date and at the location of her death. Since then, he's been trying to figure out if Jethro had more to do with the event than he let on. In the present day, Jethro is having dinner at Jeffrey's house with his strangely behaving family, and his phone keeps going off.
Sorry.
It's okay. We all have these electronic gizmos these days.
This is Mallory calling Jethro in a last-ditch attempt to get Jethro to confess to his role in Mallory's mother's death. Jethro, of course, denies all of the allegations, but then Ezra baits Mallory into a fight to show him who's boss. Jethro finds himself in a dreamlike world in which he relives the day Mallory's mother was killed. He comes to discover that Mallory trapped him in a coma with a device called the Dreamscape in a further effort to get Jethro to confess. In the Dreamscape, Jethro interacts with dream-conjured versions of Ezra and Jeffrey's father, Dr. Ted Jackson. His mind begins to manifest items including a knife and a prescient poem.
Death is more prominent than life. You don't know it until you experience it for yourself. Fool's gold may get you far, but fail to deliver in the long run. Blood of the dead stains the street, as red as the hair of the victim. Knives fly, time escapes. You realize your life is a lie. Oh, the places you'll go, to worlds where men are faster than cars, a world where not a word is spoken, into the lair of your greatest enemy. Oh, the places you'll go will give you a glimpse of the beauty and strife that these worlds have inherited. What the hell does all this mean?
Mallory wakes up Jethro, having transported his body back home. Conflict and distrust continue to brew between Ezra and Mallory. Johann brings Jethro over to Jeffrey's house. On the way, he tells him that Jeffrey was shot twice on the street by an unknown individual. Jethro goes into Jeffrey's house and reflects on his friendship with the young boy.
Hey, buddy. Don't try to talk. Everything will be alright. Yes. Everything will be alright. Ever since we met, I knew that there was something about you. You're special, Jeffrey. And Johann and I haven't been the nicest people to you, and I deeply apologize for that. This is all my fault. I'm so sorry, Jeffrey.
Right before he dies, Jeffrey whispers something into Jethro's ear. Johann questions him virulently on what Jeffrey said, but Jethro claims to have no idea. On the way home, Jethro remembers the events of the Dreamscape and how Jeffrey's death was foreshadowed directly to him. Back at his house, Jethro encounters an intruder who turns out to be an exact doppelganger of William Mallory. The doppelganger introduces himself as Bill Carrington and explains the mechanics of the multiverse to Jethro. He also tells Jethro about his dimension-jumping abilities, finally clearing the air and giving us some goddamn answers. Bill claims to have been sent to kill William Mallory and wants Jethro's help to do it. Despite some hesitation, Jethro helps Bill search for leads on Mallory's location. With Johann joining them, they confront Mallory's sister Olivia. She tells them about her mother, and Jethro realizes that Mallory plans to attack them when they get back to Jethro's house. Ezra suggests that Mallory let his grudge against Jethro go, but Mallory refuses. Ezra loans the use of his clones to Mallory, who arrive at Jethro's house and prepare to strike. Bill easily takes down the clones, and Jethro and Johann knock out and capture Mallory. Bill confides in Jethro that he doesn't know if he can go through with killing Mallory, but he decides to confront him anyway. After taunting him, Mallory overpowers Bill and attempts to kill Jethro. Johann, however, like the true friend he is, jumps in front of the knife and sacrifices himself for Jethro. Obviously angered, and for good reason, Jethro attacks Mallory, confessing that he pushed Mallory's mother into the path of the missile, causing her death. Mallory one-ups him by proudly proclaiming to have killed Jeffrey, which only makes Jethro angrier. Bill ends up saving the day, though, smashing Mallory's head to a bloody pulp. He agrees to train Jethro in the use of his abilities, much to the private interest of Dr. Jackson. Vincent Kane, a worker for the Parliament, recruits another doppelganger of Jethro to the organization. Ezra confronts Dr. Munson, a subordinate of Dr. Jackson, about maintaining the use of his facility as a base of operations. He reveals to her that, due to his iron deficiency, he regularly drinks human blood.
I don't follow the rules. Other people want to, follow the rules, go along with the flow of the crowd, that's fine. Other people want to take shit, that's fine. But I don't take any shit from anybody. So you better tell Tyrellius Jackson to do his work and get his ass out of my business, or there will be consequences. Got it?
Sometime later, Bill returns from Jeffrey and Johan's joint funeral and stops by a movie theater, encountering the same movie theater worker Jethro met when first discovering his abilities.
Thank you. What the hell is this?
It's water. I don't think I'd give someone under 21 any vodka, do you?
Months afterward, Jethro has gone off on his own, having adventures throughout the multiverse. We are reintroduced to Vincent and Riker Kane, both of whom are feeling rather down on their luck. Vincent still works for the Parliament, and Riker is on paid vacation from his job. They reminisce about the past as a part of a detective team led by Bill Carrington.
Hey Riker, do you ever get nostalgic about the old times when we were part of Bill's team?
I'm over it. I mean, it was a few years ago, and we're older now. Wiser. I mean, our powers have definitely grown. I mean, we wouldn't make the same mistakes as last time.
But you have to admit, you still think about that time we saved that Zendavian princess on Earth 36.
Oh, you know I still do. I'm surprised you still do. Remember you had that thing with Elle?
Yeah.
Oh, shit. Did I make you think about her again? I'm sorry, man. I didn't mean to.
Yeah, I get it. It's fine.
They're visited by Bill, who tells them that doppelgangers of Jethro Smith are disappearing throughout the multiverse, and he can't reach Jethro for help. Because of some past history between him and Bill, Vincent doesn't want anything to do with it. But Riker elects to help Bill discover who's behind the disappearance of doppelgangers. Bill thinks that Ezra Thorne is responsible, and we very quickly find out that he is. Ezra has captured Agent Smith, Jethro's British doppelganger, and interrogates him about Jethro's whereabouts before killing him. Ezra hopes to salvage Jethro's dimension-jumping abilities for his own gain. On Earth 15, Jack Smith, yet another doppelganger of Jethro, goes about his day as per usual until he begins to hear strange noises from the downstairs bedroom. Upon investigation, he finds the body of another Jethro doppelganger wrapped in a sheet in the bedroom. Cell service is non-existent, and Jack begins to feel like he's stuck in a horror movie scenario. Gas pumps into the house, knocking him out. An hour later, he reawakens and meets the man himself, Jethro Smith, who explains the concept of the multiverse to Jack.
We all live in a collection of universes where everyone has a doppelganger in each of those universes. And smack dab in the middle of it all is a core. And I live in the Earth that's closest to the core. I call it Earth 1, but when I try to sound cool and impress girls, I call it Earth Prime.
Jethro explains that the body Jack found was another doppelganger named Corin, who was traveling with Jethro when he was killed by Ezra Thorne's clones. Jack tries to leave, but Jethro tells him that there's another very bad man downstairs that's looking to kidnap Jethro's doppelgangers, and Jack is in danger. Jethro offers him the chance to be his new traveling companion, and Jack agrees. Concurrent events show us that the bad man Jethro was referring to is Dr. Tyrellius Jackson himself, and he begins to drag Corin's body out of his car. Meanwhile, Bill and Riker arrive at the house chasing an anonymous tip on the location of Jethro Smith. Inside, they meet Dr. Jackson, who masquerades as a CSI collecting the remains of a crime scene. After agreeing on his true identity, they try to catch up to him, but find it's too late.
You're an idiot.
A knock on the door yields no results, but Bill and Riker both start to hallucinate a red-robed figure holding a scythe, even though neither of them could see him at the same time. A trip to Earth 32 leads them to find another deceased Jethro doppelganger.
Bill, is that a dead body?
Yeah, it is.
Is it dead doppelganger of Jethro Smith?
Well, it certainly isn't the man himself. Would have gotten a notification that his tracker stopped working.
You put a tracker on him?
In him. I slipped it into a cereal one morning.
Earlier that day, Jethro and Jack received a visitor in their universe, yet another doppelganger. Richard Swift, blessed with super speed, known as the superhero Starstreak in his own universe. Richard arrives to inform them of a coming threat, the Grim Reaper, who happens to be the same figure Bill and Riker would see later. The Reaper chases them to Richard's dimension before he sacrifices himself to save Jethro and Jack. Richard dies in Jethro's arms, but not before transferring his powers to Jethro. Jethro confronts the Grim Reaper, who tells him that he serves a greater purpose. Jethro realizes the prophecy he had read in the dreamscape has started to come true through his various escapades.
You remember the prophecy, don't you?
Oh, the places you'll go. To worlds where men are faster than cars. A world where not a word is spoken. Into the lair of your greatest enemy.
It's coming true.
It's been coming true. It's been coming true for a while.
Blood of the dead stains the street, as red as the hair of the victim. Death is more prominent than life. You don't know it until you experience it for yourself.
But I can change it.
You cannot change fate.
The Reaper disappears and Jethro and Jack bury Richard. Jack expresses his nervousness to Jethro that he will die just as so many doppelgangers have, but Jethro quells his fears by promising to always look out for him. The year before, Ezra's resurrection experiments yield a surprising result. He succeeds in bringing telepathic drug dealer Carrie Voss back to life. As a test of her abilities, he sends her to get revenge on the ones who killed her, Bill Carrington's detective team. She fails and tries to kill Ezra for some reason, and so Ezra has her imprisoned. In the present day, Bill and Riker confront Ezra and accuse him of murdering Richard Swift. Ezra, who of course had nothing to do with the side adventure, sends him on their way and reawakens Carrie.
You know, when we last met, I was on the brink of sanity.
You wanted to destroy Earth 1 and gain superhuman powers. I think you were pretty far past the brink.
That was the old me. You'll find that the new me, the new Ezra, he's a little bit more forgiving.
Carrie introduces the concept of her memory box, where she stores drives containing her memories and experiences. Ezra sends her after Bill and Riker to retrieve the box. Right before Carrie leaves, though, Ezra vanishes, reappearing in the future where he meets a girl named Claire Martin. She explains that she brought him forward in time so he can help her with a device she's building, and promises a return to the present if she helps him. Back in that present, Bill and Riker come upon Dr. Jackson, who inadvertently reveals that Bill has been undercover in his service the entire time in his quest to steal Jethro Smith's powers. Dr. Jackson knocks Riker out and throws him into one of Ezra's cells in his lair. Now it's time for Dr. Jackson's backstory, as explained to Riker by the man himself. He was fired from his previous job and decided to pursue evil science, and he entered into a tentative partnership with Ezra Thorne. After the death of his son, Jeffrey, which he blames Jethro for, Dr. Jackson distanced himself from the rest of the family, and his decline in sanity eventually caused him to blow them up during a Christmas celebration. He is after Jethro's powers because he believes his multiverse traveling abilities will somehow help him reunite his family. Later, Bill reveals his backstory to Riker. His true name is Carré, and he used to be a shapeshifter. Dr. Jackson found him at some point and sent him back in time to steal Jethro Smith's powers, forcing Carré to take the form of William Mallory. When that didn't work, Dr. Jackson did it again, and so Bill has been stuck in a never-ending time loop for as long as he can remember, and is now stuck in William Mallory's form. He wants to get out of the loop, but without him, Jethro would have been killed by Mallory, and so Bill's very existence and participation in events is what keeps the timeline intact. Meanwhile, in the future, Ezra discovers that Claire doesn't actually have the ability to send him back to the present, but he has nowhere else in the future to go. He decides to continue their work on Claire's device with the faint hope of eventually returning home.
And now for something completely different.
Before Jethro disappeared, he visited a scientist for help. He fell in love with the scientist's assistant, Brooke, and when Dr. Jackson showed up and tried to get what he believed to be revenge for Jeffrey's death, he killed the scientist and Jethro escaped with Brooke. The two began a romance, but one day Jethro left inexplicably to continue his multiverse travels alone, leaving Brooke at his house.
And now for something completely different.
Yes, I know, we just did that one, but we're jumping around a little bit. A flashback shows us Carrie Voss's backstory. In 2014, she was involved in the metahuman accident where she got her telepathic abilities. More on that later. And she was helped afterward by Gwen Russo, who became Carrie's best friend. Unfortunately, Carrie's powers had an unexpected side effect, and Gwen died from a brain aneurysm. Carrie went off on her own and developed a mental illness in the wake of Gwen's death. She became a drug dealer and later had a run-in with Bill Carrington's team, including Vincent and Riker Kane, plus Vincent's former girlfriend, Ellie. After a brief manhunt, they cornered and killed Carrie, though Ezra would later bring her back to life. In the present, Carrie leaves Ezra's lair after he was transported to the future in search of her memory box. She deduces that Bill must have given it to Jethro Smith, so she goes to Jethro's house, but instead only finds Brooke there. Carrie ties Brooke up and interrogates her about the memory box, even though Brooke insists she doesn't know where it is. In Ezra's lair, Bill directly goes against an order from Dr. Jackson and picks a fight with Riker, which ends in Riker's death. He then calls up Vincent, trying to lure him in so he can kill him too. It's all the same to Bill because as far as he knows, he's just going to be sent back in time and relive everything anyway. Nothing he does matters to him. Vincent is rightly skeptical and questions Bill's excuse to lure him in, which is that they finally found Jethro Smith. Vincent elects to find Jethro himself to prove Bill wrong, and his search leads him to a movie theater on Earth 1. The man he finds there, the theater worker from seasons 1 and 2, reveals himself to be a future version of Jethro. He explains that his multiverse travels led him around dimensions and time, but his jump watch broke when he was visiting Johan and Jeffrey in the year 2010. Therefore, he had to stay there and he aged naturally, keeping an eye on his past self as the theater worker. He urges Vincent to leave Bill alone, but after receiving a posthumous message from Riker, Vincent is hell-bent on revenge. He fights Bill in Ezra's lair and he actually wins, but decides to be the better man and he doesn't kill Bill. However, he has a new plan. If he kills Dr. Jackson, Bill's time loop would never have existed and Riker would still be alive. Vincent mercilessly murders the Doctor and the multiverse begins to crumble, and with all of time being affected. Anybody related to the main plotline phases out of existence because of the timeline change, including Carrie, Brooke, older Jethro, Ezra, who has learned the true meaning of friendship with Claire, and Bill, who is happy that his cycle of torment is now over. Claire teleports to the present to confront Vincent about his actions, letting him know that the new timeline is not the ideal world Vincent hoped it would be. Sure, Riker is alive, but in this new world, Jethro was killed by William Mallory, and everything that was better in the original world is now worse. Vincent believes that they can make this new timeline better. And for help, he and Claire go to the Multiversal Police Department to visit aging officers Drake and Wayne. They summon their superintendent, who is in the middle of a peace summit with the alien Zendavians on Earth 36. Vincent gives the superintendent advice on dealing with the Zendavians, and when that's successful, the superintendent is more willing to help. They tell Vincent and Claire about the origin of Jeffrey's final message to Jethro. A few years before, Jeffrey was visited by a future version of Jethro, who gave him a message.
I need to tell you something very important. Something that you're gonna have to tell him. But not when he comes out of the bathroom. There will be a time when you have to tell him this. And it's very important because lives are hanging in the balance. You have to tell him this.
I understand.
I have to go. I've already been here too long. That felt nice. Anything happen while I was gone?
Vincent and Claire travel back to the events of Season 1 to talk to Johan during the time of Jeffrey's death, which explains why Johan was so insistent on Jethro telling him what Jeffrey said. Of course, Jethro doesn't spill the beans, and Vincent and Claire are left with a dead end. The superintendent reveals to Drake and Wayne that it was actually just a wild goose chase, and the only way that the timeline can be fixed is if Vincent resets it back to the way it was before. During a conversation with Claire, Vincent's head begins to ache, and he realizes that his memories from the other timeline are being superseded by memories from the new timeline. If he doesn't reset the timeline soon, his memories and personality will be completely reset, and he won't remember his other reality. And now for a new main character. We meet Raylan Nevaeh, a girl from the undefined future who has fallen out with her mother and so is forced to leave home. She becomes a tenant in the house that at one point belonged to Jethro, but she falls behind on her rent and resorts to theft. She's caught though, but her would-be victim is actually quite kind to her. She introduces herself as Rose Callis and recruits Raylan to a group she's forming that will protect the timeline and fix any minor errors in the past. They recruit Reagan Cassell, a dimensional engineer, and life is pretty good for a while. However, once Vincent's timeline change is picked up on their radar, Raylan is dispatched to track him down and fix it. She finds herself following his footsteps for the events of the first few episodes of Season 3, but eventually gets a hold of Vincent and brings him before Rose and Reagan. The trio attempts to convince Vincent to reset the timeline, but he refuses to budge. Claire, too, begs Vincent to reset the timeline, and their argument leads to the revelation that Claire is actually Vincent's daughter from the future, a reveal set up by the superintendent as an extra incentive for Vincent to reset the timeline. Claire tells Vincent that his girlfriend Ellie gave birth to Claire without telling Vincent, but Vincent found out and took Claire with him to Earth 1, only to later abandon her and go down a dark path of his own. Claire learned to fend for herself, which led her to begin work on her machine that she recruited Ezra for in Season 2. Vincent is shocked that his future self abandoned Claire and vows to himself that he will change his own future and be a better father. The next morning, Riker, from the new timeline, sits down for a bowl of cereal when he's faced with the season's big bad, the Grim Reaper returning from Season 2. The Reaper reveals his true identity to Riker before brutally murdering him.
Who are you? Why the hell are you doing this?
To me, you're already dead. This will convince you, Vincent. The timelines must be changed.
Raylan arrives just as Vincent and Claire discover Riker's body. Vincent can't forgive himself for letting Riker die again, this time under his watch, and he promises he will reset the timeline, as soon as he finds the Reaper and makes him pay for what he did. He leaves while Claire and Raylan work on repairing the jump watches for the purposes of resetting the timeline. Meanwhile, on their vacation, Drake and Wayne wax poetic about their past adventures before the superintendent shows up and informs them that the Multiversal Police Department headquarters has fallen, and nearly everyone is dead. The assailant, the Grim Reaper himself, arrives, and the superintendent nonchalantly throws himself at the Reaper, believing that everything will work out just fine.
Here we go.
All right, Superintendent, fuck him up.
Oh, that. What a time to die.
Drake and Wayne decide to fight the Reaper themselves, which results in both of their deaths.
Wait. I love you. In a strictly platonic, heterosexual manner.
I love you too. In that exact same way. All right.
Let's tango. I set you up, bro!
Why are you doing this?
The world needs cleansing, and you're in my way.
Vincent attempts to track the Reaper down and finally finds him in Ezra Thorne's former lair. He reveals his true identity, Vincent from another timeline.
Having to watch my brother die was one thing, but to kill him myself is another. What's wrong, Vincent?
Don't you want to know who I really am?
He reveals that he is the Vincent from Claire's future, the one who went down a dark path after Riker's death. A side effect of Vincent's telekinetic abilities was to interact with the recently deceased, and so Vincent was able to commune with Riker. However, it wasn't permanent, and Vincent became obsessed with bringing Riker back, so much so that he shut himself off from the rest of the world, and he began to descend further and further into madness. He invented a method of time travel and created the Reaper's cloak as a way of shielding himself from the time vortex. His adventures through time fashioned the classic image of the Grim Reaper, and he himself became the template upon which all the versions were based. The Reaper also wants Vincent to reset the timeline to guarantee his own existence, which conflicts Vincent because he wants the timeline to be safe, but he doesn't want to become the Reaper. Vincent escapes, followed closely by the Reaper. Vincent's first destination is Earth 9, where he asks his old teammates Aaron and Andrew Palmer for help. However, the Reaper arrives shortly after and kills Aaron and Andrew. He's moving towards Vincent when Vincent hits his jump watch on the table, accidentally messing up the mechanics. His attempted teleportation brings him right back to the table before the Reaper's arrival, giving Vincent a do-over. The process repeats several times, Groundhog Day style, as they learn newer and better methods of catching the Reaper.
No time to talk. You guys need to get the hell out of here. I have a go back. You get the beans, I'll get the pants. Okay. San Salvador, here we come. No killing this time, bitch.
No killing, you say.
Fuck!
You know, that time when the dimension with no sound just like messed up my head.
Oh shit! Jesus Christ! Hey,
Vinny,
hey,
what's
going
man?
on, man? What? Fuck!
Yo, hey. What the fuck are you doing here, man?
Fuck!
Bro. Like 50 days, bro.
Jesus Christ! Oh my God! Why are you just standing there not saying anything, man?
Well, I've tried everything else. Sorry.
Eventually, they manage to capture him and knock him out, and Vincent leaves him in Aaron and Andrew's care before returning to Claire and Raylin. With the watches fixed, it's finally time to reset the timeline. However, just as the repairs are wrapping up, Vincent is sent a video that shows the Reaper killing Aaron and Andrew. Vincent decides to hold off on the final calculations on the jump watches in favor of running from the Reaper once again. Raylin calls her estranged sister Liza and apologizes for any wrongdoing she may have caused. The Reaper shows up, and against Vincent's wishes, Raylin sacrifices herself so Vincent and Claire can escape. One of the calculations is missing, though, and so Vincent can't yet reset the timeline. However, he remembers what the Reaper said about being able to speak with deceased souls, and he summons Raylin to give him the final calculation. And now, it's hero time. In the final episode of the Jethroverse, Vincent travels back to the Turning Point and convinces his past self not to kill Dr. Jackson. With the deed undone, Vincent returns to Claire and they go back to their own timeline. Ezra, Carrie, Brooke, Bill, and Jethro all phase back into existence, left with many questions about what the hell just happened. Vincent bids Claire goodbye, intent on finding the younger version of her in his own time and making sure he becomes a better father. Before he could do that, though, he goes on a brief tour of all the people he's encountered throughout the season, many of whom have come back to life because of the timeline reset. Aaron and Andrew tell him that he needs to take more responsibility for his actions. Drake, Wayne, and the superintendent are back in business at the Multiversal Police Department. Dr. Jackson returns to his wife, Mary, and they begin to plot revenge on Vincent Kane. As Vincent visits Riker's grave, the Grim Reaper returns and slowly fades out of existence because Vincent decided to go down a different path. Next, Vincent visits Rose and Reagan, consoling them about Raylan's death. Finally, Vincent returns to his ex-girlfriend, Ellie Martin, and with a desperate plea, she takes him back, revealing to him the existence of their baby daughter, Claire. In a time before the Jethroverse had a name, the Multiversal Police Department was still very influential and effective in its duties. Wayne, reflecting on dropping out of the MVPD Academy, where Drake was the star pupil, is running drugs with Daniel Hyannis and Carrie Voss. They're planning an Earth 7 shuffle, which is a quick supply run to the short-term memory loss dimension. At the MVPD outpost, it's Drake's first day on the job. He gets a Deep Sire, essentially a mental laser, installed by Dr. Somnus, the MVPD's resident scientist and tactician. It throws Drake in for a loop, and his partner, the more experienced Richard D. Johnson, guides him to a meeting with the much younger superintendent. They send Drake and Johnson to Earth 7 for a routine dimensional contraband bust, which just so happens to be the same location Wayne, Daniel, and Carrie are heading to. They're meeting with psychic drug kingpin Gore Krennis, but everything goes sideways when Drake and Wayne recognize each other from their academy days. Wayne shoots Drake's escort Triglav Hatrick, and everything descends into chaos. It gets crazier when a mysterious figure, well-versed in martial arts, arrives and begins decimating everyone on both sides. He's well-dressed too, by the way. Even killing Daniel Hyannis and Krennis' guard Mr. Bishop. Drake and Wayne temporarily ally to rescue Krennis, an important figure to both of them, but the figure seems to have him. The figure introduces himself as Argos and monologues just long enough for Krennis to escape. Johnson arrests Wayne, and Argos also escapes, leaving Drake with not much to work with. The superintendent explains to Drake that this new Argos is a disciple of an interdimensional terrorist, the original Argos, who once tried to take over the multiverse and merge the universes together. The superintendent fired the killing shot themselves, but the new Argos clearly has an agenda of his own. To search for Krennis, the superintendent partners Drake with a man who knows Krennis like the back of his own hand.
What, so like right in here? Hey, how did you get out of yourself?
Drake? Wayne? You two are working together on this one.
No way! This guy's a real asshole!
Stop! You chumps! Better kiss and make up, alright? It's gonna happen.
They travel to Earth 29, the puppet dimension, where they suspect Krennis is hiding out with his friend Mr. Fingers. Drake and Wayne attempt to bond, but they've drifted apart so much that there's nothing much to be salvaged.
What's new with me? I have been learning French. It is muy difficile.
Cool. I always wanted to be bilingual myself. But I guess you could call me bi-curious instead.
They're led astray by a group of puppets who attempt to kill them, but they end up finding Mr. Fingers and attempt to interrogate him. They descend into infighting instead, and as all of their tension from their academy days resurfaces. Forming another temporary truce, Drake teleports into Krennis' car and attempts to arrest him, but accidentally kills Mr. Fingers with his deep sire.
No matter what, you're safe under my protection.
Yeah, sure.
Hello, boys. Oh, Officer Martin Drake, is it? We were just talking about you.
Yes, it is I, and if you are willing to cooperate, unlike Fingers here, you are under arrest, Krennis, by the MVPD.
Whoa. Can't we talk about this first? I have some very valuable assets I'm sure you could benefit from.
Come on, Krennis, you're really gonna make a deal with this pig?
You know what, Fingers? You have the right to remain silent, aka shut up! Everything's gonna go smoothly. It's gonna be fine. Oh, shit!
Yo, what the fuck was that?
I'm sorry, I accidentally shot Fingers in the face.
You killed Fingers, you son of a bitch!
God, Krennis, cooperate!
The resulting skirmish causes the car to crash, and Drake brings Krennis in. Elsewhere, in an unknown location, Drake and Wayne's evil doppelgangers are recruited by Argos for a sinister plot. Dr. Somnus plugs Krennis into his new invention, the Dreamscaper, which will allow Drake and Wayne to enter his dreams for an unconscious probing procedure. It's a primitive version of the Dreamscape, though, and Drake and Wayne have some initial difficulty navigating it. Meanwhile, Argos breaks into the MVPD and kills Dr. Somnus, giving Drake and Wayne's evil doppelgangers access to the Dreamscape, where they can attempt to kill our main characters and assume their identities. Argos takes Krennis' unconscious body and uses magic to control his mind, thereby snatching him from Drake and Wayne's interrogation. Marquess Drain and Larry Wake, the evil doppelgangers, confront Drake and Wayne and attempt to murder them. Drake corners Wayne and Drain, who are dressed identically, and has to make a choice about who to kill. He singles out Drain when he tries to use their friendship as reasoning for sparing his life, as Drake and Wayne aren't quite at that level of friendship yet. Drake and Wayne get out of the Dreamscape and confront Argos, who reveals that he was persuaded by the sacred texts of Argos to carry out his holy plan, to merge the universes together. Argos awakens Krennis, now under his control, and together they incapacitate Drake and Wayne before throwing them through a portal. Elsewhere, Dr. Somnus's consciousness survives through the Dreamscaper. Drake and Wayne appear on a desert with no horizon or end in sight. They have no choice but to get closer together as they traverse the wilderness, doing whatever they can to survive. In their sleep, they're kidnapped by cannibal bandits led by Triglav Hattrick, Drake's former co-worker who was blinded in Episode 1's gunfight, in one of his eyes at least. They intend to pit Wayne against the bandit boss in the 4th annual Bandit Slammerino, while they cut out Drake's Deep Sire for their own uses. Wayne takes quite a beating before defeating the bandit boss, while Triglav Hattrick grows a conscience and rescues Drake. The bandits begin to fight each other, and Wayne gets Drake out of there. After a chase through the forest, they're found by Richard D. Johnson, who brings them to Earth 37, the dramatic music video dimension. He tells them he's taking over the Krennis investigation, but Wayne protests that he and Drake have it handled. Johnson spills that Drake was the one who got Wayne kicked out of the academy, which creates a rift between the two friends that interrupts their perfectly good bond that was just about to bloom. What follows is so amazing, I'll just play it in its entirety.
I'm not crying. I'm not crying. Just been raining on my face. And if you think you see some tear tracks down my cheeks, then please, please, don't tell my mates.
I'm not crying. No, I'm not crying. And if I am crying, it's not because of you. It's because I'm thinking about a friend of mine. You don't know who is dying, that's right, dying. These aren't tears of sadness because you live in me. I've just been cutting onions. I'm making a lasagna. For what? Oh, I'm not crying. No!
There's just a little bit of dust in my eye that's from the path that you made when you said your goodbye. I'm not weeping cause you won't be here to hold my hand. For your information, there's an inflammation in my tear gland. I'm not upset because you left me this way. My eyes are just a little sweaty today. They've been looking around a lot, searching for you. They've been looking for you, even though I told them not to. These aren't tears of sadness, they're tears of joy. I'm just laughing. Ha, 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 ha. I'm sitting at this table called love, staring down at the irony of life. How come we've reached this fork in the road, and yet it cuts like a knife? I'm not crying. I'm not crying. I'm not crying.
In the core of the multiverse, Argos meditates and has visions of the original Argos, encouraging him to carry out his mission, manipulating him Emperor style. Drake is in a rut after his breakup with Wayne, and Johnson tries to get him out of it by emphasizing their partnership. He proves to be a bad influence, and though his MVPD work shows improvement, Drake becomes a completely different person. After falling off the wagon, Wayne becomes homeless and seeks comfort from a drug-addicted Kermit the Frog. Kermit helps Wayne realize that Johnson manipulated Wayne's initial expulsion from the academy due to his jealousy of Drake and Wayne's friendship, and encourages Wayne to find Drake and make things right.
You want to be my backup on this? I know you're good with a gun.
Hell yeah, I want to be your backup. Let's get this bastard and save the multiverse. Ready, jump. Oh, my back stitch is ripped open. Oh my God, Kermit, no, look, Kermit, it's okay. Look, I'll put this here and hold it back, right back to normal. Oh, good job, Wayne. Yeah, good work, Kermit. Are you gonna stay here and rest? Yeah, that's what I'm gonna do. You go and find your friend. Alright. Alright.
Johnson and Drake go to the core, where Johnson reveals that he's been working with Argos the entire time. He called Argos into the battle from episode 1 and is responsible for most of Argos' interference throughout the series. In an expert Back to the Future parody, Wayne arrives and knocks out Johnson, reuniting with Drake and setting off to find Argos.
And you messed it up. You stupid dummy. Hey, you get your damn hands off me. Oh.
Think you got the wrong dimension, Wayne.
Wayne, help me, please.
Just turn around and walk away, Wayne. Are you deaf, Wayne? Turn around and walk away. Beat it.
No, Richard. You leave him alone.
All right, Wayne. You're asking for it. Now you're gonna get it.
Richard, stop it! You're gonna break his arm!
Get down, Wayne!
Richard, stop it! Leave him alone!
You sucker! What do you think that was gonna do?
Drake and Wayne confront Argos, who reveals that he has enlarged Krennis just in time for the final battle. The MVPD robot Policetron, crewed by the entire police department, arrives as well and engages in battle with the giant Krennis.
Is that like a big robot?
Yeah, no, it is. It is, and it's beating up Krennis.
No, it's not. Krennis will win.
No, Krennis is gonna get the shit beaten out of him. Come on.
While this is happening, Drake and Wayne chase Argos across dimensions and time, eventually ending back in the core where Argos' plan to merge the universes together is in full swing. Drake and Wayne, through the power of friendship, unlock their Ultra Instinct forms, giving them the power they need to defeat Argos, who is left by the spirit of the original Argos. Krennis, now free of Argos' mind control, elects to stay in the core and stave off the planet's collapse through the use of his psychic abilities, effectively sacrificing himself and proving to be the hero in the end. Argos, still alive, rescues Drake and Wayne from the destruction of the core and supposedly sacrifices himself as well. Drake and Wayne mourn Krennis and are honored as heroes for their part in saving the multiverse. The series ends with a kick-ass montage that shows the two friends growing back into their partnership and friendship, and maybe saving the multiverse a few more times along the way.
Drake and Wayne, do you have anything to say about these recent events?
Yeah, check me out, yo. This is the saga of Drake and Wayne. They are Drake and Wayne, and they're pretty insane. Poppin' champagne, they drowning in fame. Now who can explain who they became? Cause they took down the big bad bitch Lane. Now everybody knows that Drake is the toolest. Pop a pill, point his gun, cutter with the bullshit. With a big brass sexy outfit, get in his way, he'll make sure you cool it. But don't fuck with Wayne, he'll beat you to a pulp. He ain't bright, but he'll smash it like a light bulb. His lady's finer than you've ever seen. Love his mama, but don't eat his green beans. Favorite food's cheddar, little bit of pepper. Enough about that, he look damn good in leather. But big than mean motherfucking machines. Couple of teens keeping those mean streets clean. They all Drake and Wayne, and they're pretty insane. You better stay in your lane, cause they're coming unchained. They ain't deranged, but they'll kick you to Spain. Buy your ass a ticket on the plane. Yo, his name is Drake, and no it's not Jake. He got a pet Drake and likes to cook steak. Likes to bake, it's a piece of cake. This guy's so fly that his parents were the mistake. We got Wayno, someone that you may know. He's clean now though, drugs no bueno. He's about to rock it and he likes to sock it. His bro is the one photo in his locket.
Drake and Wayne, all pretty insane. Oh man, so insane. They just killed 17 Saddam Hussein. And if they ever separated, they get back together again. Cause they are the bestest of friends. And that's how the story ends.
And now, back to the present. Ezra, having undergone a redemption arc during his time with Claire off-screen, is now a traveling detective seeking out those in need that he can help. He leaves Claire, now his girlfriend, to investigate the King family on Earth 2. The Kings are the doppelgangers of the Jackson family from Earth 1, and they have the same first names. The youngest, Jeffrey King, has been reading the Big Book of Voodoo and is acting strangely after an incident in which Jeffrey somehow wounds his father. Ezra shows up, supposedly to help. That night, as Ezra is having a look at the Book of Voodoo, Jeffrey attacks him out of nowhere and Ezra kills him in self-defense. Ezra uses his jump watch to freeze the King parents in time before bringing Jeffrey's puppet inside to keep an eye on. The next morning, though, the puppet is gone before it attacks Ezra and tries to kill him. Jeffrey's soul has somehow been transferred into the puppet, and a dog puppet has come to life too. They both attack Ezra, and Jeffrey the puppet cuts off his hand. Ezra escapes and goes back to his and Claire's home base, where he makes himself a robot hand and looks for tools that might be capable of taking down the puppet. In the Multiversal Police Department archives, with the help of Drake and Wayne's item logs, he finds one of Gore Krennis' staffs, allegedly containing trace amounts of his psychic power. Armed with the staff, Ezra returns to the King household and tells the parents to get the hell out of there before going in to confront the puppets. He discovers that Jeffrey, and now the puppet, is possessed by Moloch, a demon that Ezra has had dealings with in the past. Ezra sold him souls in exchange for funding, but Moloch has always been pining for one specific soul: Ezra's. Ezra kept him off for as long as he could until he was forced to make a deal. Whenever Ezra settled down in true happiness, Moloch could come and collect his soul. Ezra assumed that his cold and heartless self would be fine going the rest of his natural life without a happy relationship, but then he met Claire and everything changed. Now, Moloch is back to collect, but Ezra isn't going to let his soul be taken. He incinerates the dog puppet and incapacitates Jeffrey, or so he thinks. The King parents return back to the house in search of their son, but instead they get killed by the puppet, who steals the jump watch that Ezra gave to the parents. Ezra stumbles on the bodies at the same time as his old friend Rose Callis, who proposes they team up to find the puppet, who could be anywhere in space and time with the jump watch. Wayne tells them that they need a psychic to unlock the energy of Gore Krennis' staff, which failed Ezra during the initial puppet confrontation. So Ezra pays a visit to Earth-16 and meets Krennis' ex-wife Veronica, who begrudgingly unlocks the staff's abilities before fending off a puppet attack. Ezra returns to Rose triumphant with a fully energized staff. The puppet manages to steal it, though, and drops it off on Earth-48 in the hands of another one of Ezra's old quote-unquote friends, Raven, who gained the power to communicate with inanimate objects from the infamous metahuman accident. Again, more on that later. Ezra pays a visit to Raven, who is still bitter about Ezra's failure to save her girlfriend Alana from an untimely death. After a harsh exchange of words, the staff leaps back into Ezra's hands, and the electricity transfers into Ezra's robot hand, giving it the ability to shoot lightning blasts. Raven lets Ezra leave and take the staff with him. Returning to the office, Ezra and Rose read about the Eye of the Dragon, an ancient item with the ability to capture demons' essence. The only problem is the last person to have the Eye of the Dragon is Riker Kane, who of course is now dead. Not to be deterred, Ezra travels back through time and convinces past Riker to give him the eye, promising to use it for a noble cause despite Riker's distrust. He is the infamous Ezra Thorne, after all. Now everything is in place. Ezra has the eye, but unfortunately he doesn't know where Moloch is in the present timeline. Instead, he travels back to one of his earliest meetings with Moloch, figuring if he takes the demon out of the equation back then, none of the bad things with the King family would ever have happened. Unfortunately, Moloch is too powerful for Ezra until he figures out he can use his lightning hand. He convinces his past self to help him restrain Moloch, and Ezra uses the Eye of the Dragon to absorb Moloch's essence. This resets most of the film's events, and Ezra and Rose are delighted that the King family is back to being alive. Ezra gives the staff to Raven because she seems to have more of a connection to it. Because of confusing timeline stuff, though, different versions of the puppet are still running amok in the multiverse, so Ezra enlists Raven, Rose, Veronica, and the Superintendent to help take them down. After a fun, destructive montage, Ezra gives the Eye of the Dragon to Rose for safekeeping, and returns to Claire with new, unthreatened happiness. That happiness doesn't last long, though, because they soon find trouble in paradise. Ezra leaves, but someone tracks him down, apparently killing him. The next day, as MVPD officers photograph Ezra's body, private investigator Rex Gordon arrives, seeking more information. Ezra's funeral yields some usefulness, though, as many colorful figures from Ezra's past are in attendance. These are Vincent Cain, Carrie Voss, Raven, Jade Ackerman, an assassin, best friends Trevor Cromwell and Sadie Duvall, and Jay Price, an English doppelganger of Ezra's. All of them, including Rex, were a part of the metahuman accident of 2013, in which they were all mysteriously summoned to a single place before being affected by a seemingly random energy wave that gave most of them, excluding Rex, Jay, and Sadie, superhuman abilities. Rex doesn't believe Ezra's death was a suicide as it was framed to be, and that he was in fact murdered, but no one seems to believe him. Carrie begins to get paranoid, though, thinking someone might be following her, so she calls Rex, and they form an uneasy alliance to find the truth about Ezra. Elsewhere in the multiverse, everyone goes about their lives. Raven contemplates recent events. Jade's agent informs her that she isn't getting any job offers. Sadie, who's in love with Trevor, is frustrated at his obliviousness and apparent attraction to Jay Price. Rex tells Carrie to go back to the crime scene and scope for more clues while he gently interrogates Vincent, the first on his suspect list. Vincent, who's kind of an asshole now, rebuffs Rex angrily, not wanting to be a part of any investigation. At the scene of Ezra's death, Carrie finds keys that Ezra flung out of his pocket before he was shot. Rex investigates Ezra and Claire's office home and finds Jay Price there, who offers to help Rex search. They find a paper that makes reference to an organization called The Collective right before Carrie arrives at the office. However, a hidden assailant vaporizes her immediately, leaving only a pile of ashes with the keys inside. Rex takes the keys while Jay looks on, but as the MVPD arrives, Rex and Jay book it in separate directions. The superintendent collects Carrie's ashes and hypothesizes that her incineration was done by a staff of Gore Krennis, which of course leads them to Raven, who owns the last remaining active Krennis staff. The superintendent arrests Raven, ignoring her claims of innocence, and passes the staff off to Veronica for safekeeping before holding a press conference where they inform the multiverse of the recent developments. Rex sees right through the superintendent's lies and visits Raven in prison on Earth 50. Since Raven can communicate with inanimate objects, Rex asks her to find the source of the keys he recovered from Carrie. She tells him that it opens a lockbox, but she can't tell where, and someone called the Keymaster would be able to help with that. The Keymaster proves to be a rather unhinged individual, but through him, Rex learns that the lockbox is located on Earth 17, and Ezra was the one who commissioned the keys to be made before his death. Rex borrows the Keymaster's mechanic magnifying glass, offering his code up as collateral, and sets off to find the lockbox. Trevor and Sadie are hanging out when they're attacked by a mysterious armored figure.
No!
Sadie discovers she has powers after all when she combusts the figure's head, thereby proving him unrecognizable. Sadie sends some of the figure's DNA over to her scientist friend Brett, who confusingly informs her that the figure cells were never alive in the first place. Rex arrives and shows them the contents of the lockbox, comprehensive files on all the metahuman accident victims. They theorize that Ezra might have been a part of the Collective, an organization they still know very little about. Meanwhile, Claire is having visions of Ezra, and as she reflects on their relationship, she's observed from afar by Jay Price. 6 months ago, after Veronica helped Ezra out with the activation of the staff's psychic energy, it is revealed that the superintendent was listening in on the conversation the entire time. You see, they're dating Veronica, who really wants to get her hands on that staff. The superintendent promises it to her, explaining why they gave it to her after taking it from Raven. In the present, Rex takes the files from the lockbox to the MVPD's headquarters, which appear to be closed. A call to the superintendent's assistant yields no results, and so Rex goes directly to the superintendent himself. At Trevor's house, Jade arrives, claiming to have been attacked by a similarly masked figure. Sadie is suspicious, but Trevor is his typical oblivious self. The superintendent explains to Rex that he's been whitelisted by the MVPD and labeled as a potential threat because of his investigation. Veronica refuses to relinquish the staff despite Rex's insistence. The superintendent tells Rex that they've been shafted recently by the MVPD and was just about to be pushed out of their position before they agreed to take part in corrupt schemes organized by their boss, Charlotte, and they were allowed to keep their job. Rex is disgusted with the superintendent's fall from grace, as he considered them to be an inspiration once. Trevor visits Jay Price and admits his feelings for him, though Jay says he can't reciprocate. Trevor visits the core of the multiverse to blow off some steam, but in his anger, his time abilities speed up the day and bring the core to its nighttime. At night, in the core, the Shadow Men come out to play, and they're about to extract Trevor's abilities when the superintendent rescues him and brings him back to Rex. Though the superintendent wishes they could help with Rex's investigation, they choose to ignore it in favor of keeping their position. Claire catches Jay Price stalking her and confronts him about manipulating her emotionally after Ezra's death. After Rex and Trevor leave, Veronica and the superintendent are relaxing when the superintendent makes up their mind. They do indeed need to take the moral high ground and confront Charlotte about the corruption, even if they lose their job over it. Now, Veronica can't let that happen and slips something into the superintendent's drink. Veronica has been drugging the superintendent, periodically erasing their memory of their morally superior thoughts so that they can keep their job and Veronica can enjoy the perks that come with the power. They knock the superintendent out to reset everything, and the superintendent has a vision of their deceased brother before falling into unconsciousness. Rex and Trevor set a rendezvous with Sadie and Jade on Earth 14, but before the guys can arrive, a figure identical to the one who attacked Trevor and Sadie shoots a laser at Sadie and Jade, which transforms them into their 9-year-old selves. 3 years ago, during Ezra and Mallory's manipulation of Jethro Smith through the dreamscape, we get a sense of the distaste growing from Ezra's clones toward their creator and employer. The captain of Ezra's guard takes half of the soldiers and leaves, forming the organization known as the Collective. In the present, the captain recruits the Shadow Men from the core for their own interests. Elsewhere, Rex and Trevor are approached by Sadie and Jade, now much younger and unrecognizable. Rex takes them to a safe house while Trevor visits Rose Callis, seeking information on how the girls were transformed. It is determined that it was a time blast, a highly illegal device used to manipulate one's biological clock. Rex, Sadie, and Jade are attacked by 2 Collective soldiers who are quickly killed. On Earth 50, the superintendent, oblivious to the drugging from the previous episode, regales Veronica with the story of how they lost their brother. Before the superintendent was in their current position, the MVPD was infiltrated by shape-shifting Zendavians. The superintendent and their brother, Salazar, tracked one of the Zendavians to Earth 41, where they were lulled into a false sense of security by their target, who had taken on another form. The Zendavian killed Salazar, leaving the superintendent with irreparable trauma and lifelong scars. In the present, the superintendent and Veronica are attacked by the Shadow Men sent by the Collective. The superintendent deduces that the captain is tying up loose ends before a very brief battle begins in which the Shadow Men are destroyed. With the help of time travelers from across the multiverse, Trevor pinpoints the location of the time blast to the superintendent's house. Rex and Trevor investigate, and even though the superintendent insists, with some sincerity, that they were framed, Rex doesn't believe them. He returns to the safe house, where one of the fallen Collective soldiers has been inexplicably revived. Rex questions him and finds that he has some sway over the soldier's answers. He's fallen for a trap, though. The Collective soldier breaks free of his bonds and teleports Rex to an unknown location. Sadie discovers that Jade planned this whole thing, and as they transform back into their older selves, we realize that Jade has been working with the Collective this whole time. Rex appears, tied and bound, at the Collective's headquarters, where the captain reveals all of their secrets. After splitting off from Ezra in an effort to create a superhuman army of their own, the Collective carried out an experiment on a group of individuals that became known as the Metahuman Accident. It failed to brainwash them and instead simply gave them superpowers. With the revelation that the accident was no accident at all, Rex deduces that the captain's tying up of loose ends extends to the accident victims, and that's why Collective soldiers have been after all of them. On Earth 1, Jay Price responds to Claire's summons, only to be tasered and knocked out. When he regains consciousness, Claire confronts him about his false identity, and it's revealed that Jay was Ezra, who has been alive this whole time.
Surprise?
Now it's time for some backstory on Jade. She started to open up to people when she met Vincent and Riker's cousin Liza randomly on the street. Years later, she records a confession tape to use in court should she get caught working with the Collective. In a fourth wall-breaking monologue, Rex explains the accident victims' connections with Ezra, one thing that continued to unite them after they went their separate ways. Rex met him at a crime scene after he reformed himself. Raven, Ezra's former best friend, left him after he unintentionally got her girlfriend killed, but reunited with him to defeat Moloch. Sadie matched with him in a speed dating session. Carrie was brought back to life by Ezra after her initial death at the hands of Bill Carrington's team, and Trevor hung out with him, having been introduced by a mutual friend. Some of the connections are tenuous at best, but it's still strangely coincidental that they all encountered Ezra at some point in their post-accident lives. Speaking of Ezra, he has a lot to answer for. Claire interrogates him about why he faked his own death, and so Ezra brings her back to the beginning, starting with the Collective split from his own interests. He was also summoned to the metahuman accident site, but he created a fake persona named Jay Price to disguise who he really was. Years later, to sabotage the collective, he broke into their compound and stole their files, which was why they were tying up loose ends in the first place. He hid the files in the lockbox that Rex found, getting a key from the Keymaster and making sure it wouldn't be found. When the collective discovered it was him, they tried to kill him, and he figured faking his own death and laying low, making them think that they had won, would be the best possible option. But he didn't consider Claire, who did a little digging of her own, and gradually came to the conclusion that Jay Price wasn't who he said he was. They reevaluate their relationship and decide to take a break. Still imprisoned by the collective, Rex discovers that, like Sadie, he also got an ability from the metahuman accident, that of persuasion. He uses his powers to escape and picks up Sadie from the safe house. Trevor breaks Raven out of MVPD prison and they all reunite on a field. Jade is there too, having been invited by Rex, but he's willing to give her a chance to explain herself. She says that, after a battle with Argos, yep, that Argos, caused her to reconsider her life choices and skills, the collective approached her and offered her a job to keep an eye on the accident victims. Rex knocks her out, and then the collective arrives. A power-charged battle with a Shadow Man, a collective soldier, and the captain results in Sadie's death at the hands of the captain himself. Trevor, unable to contain his grief, accidentally transports himself and Rex back in time to Ezra's funeral 3 days earlier. Trying to get back to their own time, they approach Ezra, then in disguise as Jay Price, and enlist his help in getting them a time travel jump watch. While they wait, the collective captain arrives from the future, intending to kill the accident victims in the past to prevent them being a problem in the present. Vincent manages to summon Riker's ghost to fight off the captain, and Rex and Trevor believe they finish the captain off, and they go to get a jump watch from Ezra. Trevor's powers short out the jump watch, and they find themselves in the world between worlds, a limbo existing outside of time and space. While repairing their own friendship, they meet Rex's medieval doppelganger, mirror versions of themselves, and finally Grigory Rasputin himself, who assists them in returning to their own reality. Back in the present, Rex goes to the collective headquarters where the still-living captain is waiting for him. He blows up the compound, but Trevor rescues Rex, teleporting him out of the building just in time. Back at the site of the battle, everything begins to tie itself up. A funeral is held for Sadie. Ezra resolves to prove to Claire that he's indeed changed for the better. Jade gets thrown in MVPD prison for her crimes, with a visit from Liza giving her hope that she still has a life out there. Vincent continues his lonely existence. The superintendent finally retires from the MVPD, ridding themselves of the corruption but not of Veronica, still unaware that they're being drugged. Raven returns with the staff to her own universe, happy at how things have worked out. Trevor relocates permanently to the core, intending to live a peaceful life. Rex continues his detective work, eventually returning the magnifying glass to the Keymaster in exchange for his jacket and hat. Some months after Multiversal, two MVPD officers, Marsh and Howard, are reviewing files from what's being called the Collective Incident. They come across a previously unread testimony which leads them to investigate an undocumented aspect of Jade Ackerman's involvement in these events. Right after she left her agent's house in a huff in Multiversal Episode 1, she runs into none other than Jethro Smith, dressed similarly to his future mysterious visit to Jeffrey Jackson. Jethro claims to have met Jade, even though Jade has never met him before.
We've met before. You haven't met me. I mean, you're meeting me now, but you haven't met me yet, besides this me. There's another me that you're going to meet. It's all good.
He's traveled back in time for some reason, and Jade calls Liza for help. Elsewhere, Rex has discovered Carrie's ashes, and Jay Price, actually Ezra, ducks back into the newspaper office to avoid the superintendent's arrival. He sees a monitor that Jethro has returned to the multiverse, which piques his interest. Liza's questioning of Jethro doesn't yield any useful results, but suddenly they're attacked by a silent mercenary going by the name of Talon. He seems to be immortal and unable to be killed by normal means. Ezra shows up, though, and time blasts Talon, freezing him in one spot. They escape, and Ezra reveals his true identity to Jade, meaning that through most of Multiversal, Jade knew that Ezra was alive. Jethro and Ezra reminisce.
Hey, did you make that, the time travel jump watch? Did you make that yourself?
Yeah, my friend Bill taught me how.
Really? And, why did you end up leaving?
I felt tied down. At home. Limited to space, but no time.
I understand that. I really do.
I also, left someone behind. A girl.
The hardest choices require the strongest wills.
Thanos?
Yeah, you got the reference. Yeah, I also had to leave someone behind. A girl, her name's Claire. I feel fucking shitty about it, but, you know, I was doing it to protect her, you know, I hope she can understand that.
Ah, yes. The classic excuse.
It's not like that. I mean, maybe I was just looking for a reason, a way to leave, but I have the best intentions at heart, and I just really hope she can realize that when all this is over.
Let's just leave it at the fact that we've both done shitty things. And we're trying to make those things right again. One way or another.
Talon shows up and knocks Ezra out of commission, giving Jade the opportunity to steal his Time Blast device. Ezra teleports away in an act of self-preservation and goes to see Claire, proving that he really was there at the end of Multiversal Episode 2. Talon succeeds in kidnapping Jade, and Ezra returns to Jethro and Liza, offering to help. A flashback to Jade's first day as an assassin informs us that Talon was her very first target, and she was unable to follow through with killing him. In the present, Jethro, Ezra, and Liza meet with Jade's agent, who confirms that Talon is after Jade for revenge. The agent also reveals that Talon has been taking enhancement drugs, giving him invulnerability and super strength. Jethro, Liza, and Ezra track Jade down and are about to inject Talon with a solution that will neutralize his super strength, thus making him vulnerable when he breaks free. Jade shoots him again with the Time Blast, making his cells younger and bringing him back to a time when his body was able to be destroyed. Ezra is the one who finally does it, shooting Talon through the head with a shotgun, apparently killing him for good. In farewell, Ezra advises Jethro to be careful with his time travel jump watch and makes Jade promise not to spill his secret to the other metahuman accident victims. Before he leaves, Jethro tells Jade that, in his past, their previous interactions were negative and he was hoping to make things right before they even went wrong. They part on neutral terms, and Jethro leaves using his superhuman speed that he acquires somehow in his past. As Jade and Liza are leaving, they're approached by the Collective Captain, who tells Jade he needs the accident victims taken care of, and he needs Rex Gordon alone. Jade produces the Time Blast, thus spurring the third episode of Multiversal into motion. Let's go further back in time. Shortly after the events of Drake and Wayne, after Argos escaped the destruction of the core, he set out to make a new life for himself in the great wide multiverse. Years later, he's teamed up with Caspian Steel, and together they fight Jade Ackerman, who is unprepared for Argos' abilities. Keep in mind, this is years before the events of Multiversal, so Jade is still a struggling assassin at this point, before even teaming up with the Collective. Argos and Caspian are on the rocks, though, especially because Argos once pressured Caspian into killing somebody. More on that in the Jethroverse Hollow Victory. Argos' powers are failing, though, and so he leaves Caspian in search of something more. While waiting for Rex Gordon to return with his magnifying glass, the Keymaster delves into his own mind and examines his own insanity. In doing so, he comes into conflict with a dark version of himself, sensibly known as the Evil Keymaster. The two face off, but the Keymaster realizes that since it's his mind, he's able to control it, and he seemingly purges Evil Keymaster from his consciousness. In the end, though, he's still layers deep in his own psyche, with no apparent end to the madness in sight.
Goo-goo-goo-choo.
Now that we're done with the flashbacks, we can catch up with our main characters in the present. Ezra Thorne is getting old. He's worried he doesn't have much time left, so he's trying to make as much of a difference as possible with the help of his friends, even though he and Claire are still on a break in light of the events of Multiversal. Ezra visits Raven and asks for her help in answering a distress call on Earth-16, where they find a young woman convulsing on the ground. Ezra can't figure out what's wrong with her, so he uses the Dreamscape to enter her mind and find the root of the problem. There, Ezra is attacked by a figure he recognizes from his past, and he gets out of there as soon as he can. Ezra and Raven bring the girl, whose name is Lily Smith, back to Raven's home field. When she reawakens, Ezra questions her about the figure in her dream, but she can't remember anything useful. Ezra delves back into Lily's consciousness as Raven keeps watch, though she begins hearing things.
Pew.
Better come back soon, Ezra. I don't think we're alone here.
The figure attacks Ezra and Lily again, but they escape and strategize. The figure reveals himself to be Nova, a shape-shifting Zendavian who Ezra believed to be dead. Since it's her dream, Lily is able to conjure up an effective weapon of her own, and they concentrate their power on Nova, who ends up escaping anyway before knocking Ezra out. Lily escapes the dreamscape, and Raven explains that Nova was one of the Zendavians leading the attack that killed Raven's girlfriend Alana. They begin to formulate a plan to get Ezra out of the dream world, which is showing Ezra his perfect idyllic life with Claire. It becomes increasingly clear that the world is not real, made all the more obvious by the laugh track.
My taste buds are about as adventurous as a rock on cocaine!
My boyfriend and his nonsensical similes.
My girlfriend and her pointed remarks about me.
Ezra breaks free of the illusion, and Nova confronts him, bringing Ezra another layer deeper into the dream world. This one is a recreation of the King family home from Beyond Help, and Ezra meets a dream version of Jeffrey and the puppet, who are possessed by an imaginary version of Moloch. Once again, Ezra breaks free, this time finding himself in front of a rhododendron bush from the home of his deceased wife, Sam. A dream version of Sam tries to get Ezra to stay in the dream world, but Ezra is now all too aware of the illusion, and breaks free once again. Raven and Lily assist Ezra in attacking Nova, and they leave the dreamscape, unintentionally bringing Nova with them. It turns out that Ezra tracked Nova down after Alana's death and burned him alive for revenge. And now Nova's back, dead set on vengeance. Nova, being a shapeshifter, takes the form of the Superintendent after sensing Raven's trauma from her recent experience with the unjust imprisonment from Multiversal. Raven nearly kills Nova, but holds off at the last minute thanks to Ezra's insistence, showing that he's truly changed from who he once was. Ezra brings Nova to the interdimensional Supermax and hands him over to the Warden and a guard. Back at home, Raven ascends into the dream world and meets Nova's spiritual form, who tries to turn her against Ezra in a last-ditch effort. Using an unwieldy weapon, she finally kills Nova once and for all, ending his miserable existence. A post-credit scene shows Ezra and Lily's friendship growing as they set off to trek the endless dunes of Earth-37. And that's all you need to know before watching the Jethroverse Hollow Victory, which is available on YouTube now. I hope you've enjoyed the ride, even though this recap doesn't do a lot of these films and shows justice. They're worth a look. Thanks for watching. See you on the flip side.